Okay, so first of all, I would like to welcome you all to the Style Network seminar. This is the first one in the academic year 25-26. I'm extremely excited about today's topic, perfectionism and healthy minds, a multidimensional approach to understanding and support, because it's something that we see quite a lot in students, but also in teachers and staff. And I'm delighted to have Irina Roncaglia with us today to talk to us about this topic and to share her expertise. Dr. Irina Roncaglia is a chartered practitioner, psychologist, and HCPC registered as a practicing sport and exercise psychologist. She is an associate fellow of the British Psychological Society and a member of the International Association of Dance and Medicine, as well as a health practitioner with One Dance UK. So very applied. She provides consultancy to elite performers, both in international organizations as well as educational provisions. Irina has 24 years experience working as a chartered practitioner, psychologist, clinical lead with the National Autistic Society. She is an associate consultant to AT Autism. She graduated from Roehampton University with a BSc in psychology and dance studies and gained a PhD in life course development studies from Birkbeck University in London. Prior to this, Irina has worked as a professional performing soloist dancer with the London Festival Ballet, now English National Ballet, for over 15 years. Irina's research interest is transdisciplinary, focusing upon the understanding and development of wellness, well-being, and resilience in different client populations. She's also interested in people's engagement and optimal performance through the application of positive psychology and strength-based framework. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Irina. I'm going to stop sharing my slides so that you can share yours.
Thank you so much, Carolina, for that introduction, and hello to everyone, and welcome. I'm just going to bring up my slide and hopefully keeping fingers crossed so that everybody can see.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. So far so good. So far so good. Just going, Carolina has given me a wonderful introduction, so I won't spend too much time to the next slide, which I'm hoping is coming up. As Carolina mentioned, the presentation and what I really aim to do today is provide really a sort of a practitioner position of perfectionism and how my work with my clients or my performing artists and elite athletes, elite performers are managing and really navigating the perfectionism traits. I've done all the kind of consultancy mainly in dance, but I'm very passionate in supporting everybody's performance really. So the way that I talk about today is performance, not just with elite performers and dancers, which is my main sort of experience, but if we try to think about performance more broadly, because we are all performing, whether we are preparing for a lecture, whether we are writing a book, writing an essay, whether we are performing on stage or not performing on stage, it's performance in a more wider, in a wider way. Then I will talk about perfectionism and some definitions. There is a lot of literature on perfectionism, and sometimes it's conflictual. So I'm going to take the dimension of perfectionism and how I use that knowledge in creating and promoting optimal performance in the clients that I support, and really generally how we can support all of us who present those traits with healthy minds, so that performance is not dictated by perfectionist traits and perfectionist characteristics, but it's used in a positive way. And then hopefully some concluding comments, and we have left 15 minutes at the end of the lecture to talk about questions and comments from the audience that I would really welcome. So this is what I often use with dancers, looking at performance, but also elite athletes, looking at performance in different areas. And obviously today we have not got the time to address each of the section of the pie, but putting it into the context, so talking about perfectionism in the context of optimizing performance. We want to ensure that we manage our anxiety, our level of stress that may come indeed from having to perform or having to deal with those perfectionist traits. We want to look at cultivating confidence. We want to look at minimizing those perfectionist tendencies that usually are creating an environment for the individual, whereby the individual is sometimes struggling because of these perfectionist tendencies. And then nurturing self-awareness, and Carolina spoke about very much looking at using positive psychology and positive frameworks that help the individual to nurture self-awareness, and really looking at controlling the controllable. It's what I can do for the things that I have control over, but try to park and try to put aside the things that I realize I cannot actually control. So with that in mind, what is perfectionism? Well, there are many different definitions of perfectionism, and I just decided to bring up this one from Jut Flat and Frost and colleagues. It's a personality trait that is characterized by a person striving for flawlessness. So no mistakes, no errors in whatever task or performance that they are executing, and setting excessively high performance standards that are accompanied by overly critical self-evaluation, so very critical about one's own performance, and concerns regarding others' evaluation. So thinking about comparing always one performance with others. And what this definition helps us is to then move on onto this multi-dimensional perfectionism that again I use with my clients and with the dancers, and looking at perfectionism in a multi-dimensional way, whereby there are a combination of high excessive performance standards, overly critical self-evaluation, and they are really understood in terms of direction of perfectionist beliefs and behaviors. And what I use in helping the clients that I work with, it's really looking at these three different main dimensions of perfectionism that have been proposed in the 90s, but still very valid by Hewitt and Flat. So the first one is perfectionist tendency that are self-oriented. So they are directed towards oneself. We attach irrational importance to being flawless, to being perfect. We hold very unrealistic expectation of ourselves. So we create a very high standard, unrealistic standards of performance. And they have a punitive nature in the evaluation of one's own performance. The socially prescribed perfectionism instead is perceived as coming from others. So the high level, high standards are set out by other people. Individuals believe that their social context is excessively demanding, and there is a harsh judgment from others, and they must display perfection to secure a sense of approval. So never a performance is good enough. Never training, it's hard enough. And I will talk about how maladaptive behavior can actually be nurturing from these socially prescribed perfectionism tendencies. And the third one is the other-oriented perfectionism, where our expectations are directed towards others. So we judge the performance of others as never being good enough. We impose unrealistic standards to those around us and evaluate them very, very critically. So the link between perfectionism and mental health has been widely studied. And on the left side of the screen, I put those studies that have looked at the SOP, so the self-oriented perfectionism. And to the right, the socially prescribed perfectionism. So we have studies from the self-oriented perfectionism from colleagues Andrew Hill, Tracy Donachie from the University of Newcastle, that have looked at a mixture between adaptive and maladaptive effect from this self-oriented perfectionism. So there are positive and negative effects that are influencing motivation of individual, general well-being, performance. Some other study by Watson and colleagues have looked at still the self-oriented perfectionism and looked at the prediction of confidence in psychological support. So how easily individuals who are characterized by self-oriented perfectionism, how likely they are to seek support and to seek help-seeking behaviors. And the last one, there is a prediction, again, positive about excitement before competition. If I have to compete or if I have to perform, I need to ensure that all my body, all my sort of arousal level are at a level that I can perform, that I can harness all the different skills in my body, cognitively, physically, the coordination of the movement in order to perform at my best. So a certain level of arousal, it's really needed. But the socially prescribed perfectionism has indicated more clearly that that can lead to maladaptive behavior. And there is a relationship with poor mental health indicators that are found with a variety of sample players, soccer, footballers, again, Andrew Hill research, Jordana and Collins and Jensen and colleagues. And depressive symptom can predict increase in socially prescribed perfectionism, as well as predicted anger before competition. And although in some type of sport, a certain level of aggression is needed, what we needed to ensure is that there is a balance. We can't really have aggression and anger prior competition when there are specific skills that need to be performed at any given time. So this is a little bit the link perfectionism to mental health and some literature. And here, Andrew Hill and Daniel Madigan have spoken about some high order dimension. So they talk about this perfectionist striving, so aspects of perfectionism that are, again, setting up a very high standard for the individual. So they divide between striving for perfections and the concerns that are associated to making errors, to making mistakes, and even to a point of feeling fear of making a mistake, fear of negative social evaluation, feelings of discrepancy between one's expectation and performance, and negative reaction to imperfection. So never a performance, a task is good enough. There is always the lenses to the imperfect skill or the imperfect exercise, or what is it that went wrong, rather than looking at the balance between what went right and what went wrong, and what can we do about it to make it better. So adopting those positive framework, adopting those healthy minds to improvement. So there is really a paradox, the way that I see it, and the way that I kind of use it in my practical work. The excessive unrealistic drive to perfection can, of course, impair performance if I never embrace that there will be mistakes, that there will be errors, that the expectations are unrealistic. Of course, it will impair my performance. But without any standards, people generally achieve less, and there is research backing up this statement. So having high standard is not a negative thing per se. And when I kind of talk to my clients, when I talk to my athletes and performers, it's really try to find that sort of balance between not being too excessive, not being unrealistic, and adopting psychological tools in the work that they do in order to address those very strong perfectionist traits, but looking at still achieving and wishing to achieve for high standards, because the reality of the performance, kind of performing art industry, it's very, very competitive. And I can see that there is a lot of competition in academia, there is a lot of competition in the world in generally. So having high standards, I think it's important that they keep that high standard to be able to keep up with the kind of the harsh reality of the environment. And so there is a big difference between trying to excessively, unrealistically driving for perfection, and looking at replacing that with healthy and healthful pursuit of excellence. So often I try to use different terminology rather than using perfectionism, which is often associated with maladaptive behavior. It's really looking about effort of the individual. It's about looking at pursuing excellence in whatever endeavor they are engaging, so that we nurture more healthy minds in the task that we are executing, in the sort of targets and goals that we are setting for ourselves, rather than unhelpfully striving for perfection. So what I use again in trying to sort of better understand how perfectionism affects ourselves individually, but also other people, is I use elements of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, but more broadly, this comes from coaching psychologist Stephen Palmer. Is a coaching psychologist, a chartered coaching psychologist, and the sort of the space model is used in looking at really recognizing whenever there are perfectionist sort of a tendency in analyzing and in looking at how one is done in a specific performance, is looking at the physiological responses. Of course, it's looking at the different type of thinking that goes on in our minds, our cognition, how those cognitions and thinking influences our emotions and our feelings, and ultimately, as a result of that, how we behave, so how we respond to specific situation. And all this is, of course, not happening in a vacuum. It is happening in a social context. So the space model, the S stands for the social context in which this 4 different elements are being addressed. And by understanding perfectionist tendency, by using this model, it helps the performance, it helps the individual to really recognize where do I need to work? Do I need to look at how my thoughts and my thinking is influencing how I respond to a situation? Do I need to look at self-regulation in terms of emotional and feelings that are too strong in order to adaptively respond to the environment? Okay, so negative perfectionists give a different type. This is again example from research from Andrew Hill and Tracy Donaghy, but also from professional practical experience. And the perfectionist conditions, they are likely to lead to vulnerability in experiencing mental ill health. Are, for example, people may always feel that they never got any free time, so they address a very little importance to rest and recovery in the kind of athletes, performing elite athletes. Rest and recovery is an important element to optimize the performance. There is no achievement that is ever good enough, so never looking at the successes, but always looking at the failures. People may say that they blame themselves if things are not done just right, or I must go over my work many times until it's acceptable to me. I must do more and more in order to feel accepted by others. So there is that incredible drive in practicing, doing things over and over again, steps that are executed over and over again without really a clear understanding of what the goal is of that practice, what is it that needs to be improved, because they are driven by those perfectionist tendency. Or people may say that they are afraid of failing, so they never start doing a specific step, a technical step, or they never started to learn a new skill. And of course, at the beginning, when we are learning new skills, we are not perfect. We are not excellent in that skill. It needs a practice. So some unhelpful thoughts that I try to kind of to put at home to really create an understanding and awareness for the clients that I work with is really this this sort of ability to think either black and white. There are no shades of gray, so it's a all or nothing thinking. There is always a should or a must, which places unreasonable demands on the self and others. There is a tendency to catastrophize about a situation. So often I get with the clients when there is a mistake that has been executed or technically has not been as they wish them for the performance to go, is but what if a scenario which are in the future is catastrophizing about something that has not yet happened. And so a lot of work is to kind of use mindfulness, using presence, using a way to bring back the individual onto the facts and the sort of the present moment, not thinking about the future, or indeed to jump to conclusions. So assuming that we know what others are thinking or can predict the future. And these unhelpful thinking styles are quite characteristics in people that present with perfectionist tendency. And so the ability to challenge and to reframe the thinking is part of the work that I do. So here, perfectionist cognition, you've got the automatic thinking that comes into mind, reflecting on the desire to be perfect, rather than being more aware about the present situation, being more aware about self-awareness, which is a skill again that it's nurtured in trying to achieve the optimal performance and healthy mind. And another perfectionist cognition, which is very characteristic, is about the overthinking about the mistake and called, known as from the literature, mistake rumination. So ruminating, thinking continuously about the mistakes, almost getting the individual to a point of freezing in the execution of a step, whereas we need to have freedom of thinking at the moment of executing a specific sequence or a specific exercise. Okay, so some other signs of perfectionist behavior, just a thought of kind of sharing some of what really my practice has taught me over the time, is an inability to make decisions. So decision making is really quite significantly affected. Not being able to decide what to wear each morning, finding it so difficult to choose what class to go to that it becomes too late to attend any of those classes. Some challenges, again, sign of perfectionist behavior. So what we do and how we responded to the environment is that we might seek reassurance continuously. So needing everyone to compliment the performance that we have engaged in, or constantly seeking approval. Constantly checking, so repeatedly looking in the mirror. This is for dancers who are practicing in studios in front of a mirror, and they repeatedly looking into the mirror for imperfection rather than looking at also things that have gone right, that are good, rather than focusing as well on the kinesthetic feel of the sequence. Constantly searching for error, so checking where the errors are, but not with a clear purpose of trying to understand what the error is and what changes are needed to make in the sequence, what other skills are needed to learn in order to address, in order to not to repeat the same mistake. There is this constant searching and checking, checking for error. Other sign of perfectionist behavior, not knowing when to stop or creating list of tasks. I'm quite someone that likes to create a list and then tick them off, and it becomes almost in itself the ticking off of the list, losing really the meaning of why we have created those lists in the first place, so that we are ending up pages and pages of priority. Or when we find ourselves with others, is arguing a point over and over again, long after others might have lost the interest in the sort of in the conversation, in the discussion. Or practicing and rehearsing a step repeatedly. I've shared that, with no clear goal or path on how to achieve actual success. Some more perfectionist behavior, avoidance. So for dancers, really, it's putting applications, so to audition for a specific company. So they are not putting application in for fear that they are going to be rejected. So the ability to accept a rejection is another area that is worked on with clients that I work with. Never attending class at the front of fear of criticism, attempting to change other people, correcting constantly other people in the way that they are interacting with you, constantly commenting when you feel people are being incorrect, and guiding them to behavior you think is more acceptable. So these are all the signs of perfectionist trait and behavior that people may engage in. So when we look at this excessive criticism, excessive expectation of oneself as well as others, that will lead to maladaptive behavior, maladaptive responses, and certainly will affect our self-worth, the way that we relate to one's achievement. We will feel unable to derive a satisfaction from our efforts and our accomplishment. So we will look only for the end goal rather than the journey undertaken to that, which has got, of course, a meaning in itself. Unable to cope with failure or mistake, expectation of others, unfair, uncontrollable, or untenable, and generally experiencing quite a lot of negative emotions that become a common state of being. And that, as a result, is likely to lead to clinical depression, to a sense of helplessness, high level of anxiety, high level of stress that can affect the quality of sleep and rest, can lead to disordered eating and eating disorders, self-loathing, being hostile, and general low compliance and trust in oneself and in others. So this is 2020 research by Angela Pickard, who has done some work and some research in different European countries in ballet dancers, and very high perfectionist tendencies in ballet dancers. So she shared that perfectionist internal dialogue and pressure becomes part of the ballet body belief. So very strong sort of belief of being aesthetically perfect and technically perfect. It is maladaptive when two-dimensional, perfect or not perfect. Found that selectively attending to cues that signal the possibility of error, mistake, and imperfection that impacts negatively on psychological well-being, facilitating what we have seen in the previous slide, some self-blame, shame, anxiety, unmanageable stress, and other concerns. And risk, as we said, as I said earlier, in eating disorders and disordered eating, which is quite high in the ballet population, driving always for thinness and aesthetic perfection. So we moving on, and I can't see the chat or anybody's comments, but I just wanted to take just 1 minute to reflect on the positive qualities that you may associate with perfectionism. And what are some of the advantages of setting high standards? How might being a perfectionist be helpful to you and your student? Think about it for a moment and just jot it down for yourself, or if you want to put it in the chat, please feel free to do so. But what other, the other side of perfectionism, what positive qualities may you see from having perfectionist tendencies? And Carolina, are you able to see some of the comments? I mean,
Yes.
we can take it at the end with the questioning, because I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of
Yeah.
debates.
So we have a couple of questions, but we leave them to the end. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to keep an eye on them. That's okay. I think that's actually quite nice exercise that you post there. So what are the positive qualities? So if you want to just use the chat to add some keywords there, that would be great. And then we move on. Yeah, that's great. I will add my own as well. So see.
Yes, please.
Can you see the chat, Irina?
No, I'm afraid.
Okay. So so far I'm the only one who has contributed, but I think people are probably still typing, so it's coming in, coming in. So maybe being more detail oriented and more organized. Emily said, I think high standards can be useful because if you aim for 90%, you might get to 80, but if you aim for 50, you get only 40. So.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Yeah, absolutely. The sort of the attention to details in whatever endeavor you are going to be engaging in. It is a positive, and the high standard, as I was saying, we needed to aim for ourselves and for our students to high standards, because competition, whatever industry you're going in, it's clearly very competitive. So
Yeah.
that's really helpful.
We
That's
have
really
more. We
helpful.
have more actually coming
Oh,
in. So we have yeah, positives here. You can be very self-driven. Then
yeah,
someone else said more strong intrinsic motivation, perhaps. And then high standards help to set the baseline to identify areas where we can just outdo ourselves, growing better and be wiser. Um, Constant questioning of things helps to encourage improvement. So we have quite a,
excellent.
yeah, we have many things coming in now. Good.
Excellent, excellent. That's excellent. So yeah, so let's move on. And
Mhm.
thank you very much for sharing those comments, which hopefully will pick up in a conversation at the end through the Q&A. So adaptive perfectionism is really characterized as a normal, healthy type of perfectionism, and is defined by deriving satisfaction from the achievements that we all made from intense effort, so the energy that we are investing in a specific task, and at the same time the ability to tolerate those imperfections without resorting to the harsh self-criticism that characterizes maladaptive perfectionism. And some wonderful comments that you shared in the chat in terms of the sort of feeling good about achieving with high standard and high details a specific task, embracing the imperfection in order to actually improve. So driving internal intrinsic motivation to make the improvement, to be better in whatever endeavor we are embracing. So putting it up, I think I've got in my next slides. What's good by being a perfectionist? So it's this notion of pursuing excellence, which in itself makes us feel good when we are achieving something that makes us feel good, and it feels good. It's something that is healthy, and setting high standard in very competitive industry, very important. Highlighting the notion of effort in achieving, and highlighting really the notion of the journey and the process. So rather than looking just at the final destination, is really supporting individual in recognizing the efforts that they are investing, the drive that they are investing in achieving the enjoyment of the process. So it's not the enjoyment just about the last destination, the final result or final outcome, but it's really throughout that journey, throughout that process. Challenging oneself and really creating a sense of achievement by challenge oneself, by embracing things that we might not know. So the work that I do, it's really the ability to sit with those imperfections, which may lead to uncomfortable emotion and uncomfortable feeling. But that is the beginning of something that we are perhaps not so good at, that we needed to learn the skills about. So the idea of challenging oneself with kindness, with compassion, and with an ability to accept that at the beginning it might feel really strange, really not very good, but being able to sit with that uncomfortableness, with that imperfection, helps the individual then to move forward more positively. And the enjoyment that one's get in learning new skills, tending to achieve good results and promoting a sense of agency and control. So agency control from self-determination theory is an important element that I always try to bring in the conversation and the work that I do. Important for individuals to feel that they are agents of their actions, and important for individuals to feel that they are in control of certain element of their performance. And that goes back to controlling the controllable. So when something is not controllable, it's just the ability to be able to park it and to put it aside. So good reason, belief and behavior. So people who are who do present with perfectionist tendency, the good reason that they may share are that they like to do things well, makes them feel confident, get satisfaction, knowing that they've tried their hardest, that they enjoy the process of learning. They like being prepared for an event, and they try to rehearse the practice steps out regardless of the outcome. So it's really that focus shift from the final outcome, the final destination, the medal for athletes, the final performance. It's really the enjoyment throughout the process, which can also be used as an example for other endeavor. It's not the final destination, but it is the pathway throughout where the individual invests the thriving, the internal motivation, the enjoyment of the challenges embraced in order to become better. So promoting optimal performance and healthy mind. This part of the conversation this afternoon is to share some tools. So I invite you to think about some tools that we can all adapt in our daily work, in our daily living, to address some of the maladaptive, to address some of the challenges that negative perfectionist tendency can bring to all of us. So practicing flexibility, the idea that our perfectionist striving can lead us to become very rigid in what we embrace and what we do. And that means that we struggle in accepting changes. We struggle in accepting novelty or routines that are not the same. And mental and emotional flexibility can be practiced like any other muscle. So the ability to practice some flexibility in our daily routine can help us to nurture that mental flexibility and emotional flexibility that comes with it. So one exercise that I share, obviously throughout the work and throughout kind of case formulation of the clients that I see, is simply practicing daily for 1 week the following. So one is engaging in one thing that you would normally not do, and the other is do not engage in one thing that you usually engage in. Really in trying to introduce an element of unpredictability, an element of difference, and practice really once, daily for a week, these changes in your routine, something that you do normally, that you always do, and trying to engage in something that you don't normally engage, and try to stop something that you usually do that gives you that sense of safety, the sense of security, but try not to engage in it. Another um, another kind of work that I do in promoting healthy mind and in promoting a way of supporting perfectionist traits are psychological based strategies. So positive self-talk, positive affirmation of oneself, pre-competition, pre-performance, blocking out the distractions. For those who have seen the World Championship interviews from athletes, it's how do you get into that zones? How do you ensure that any distraction that is not relevant to the performance at the present time can be parked away, can be put away? And there are little exercises again that can be done in promoting that. Breath control through model of positive psychology, breathing. It's something that I use a lot in my practice, that promotes self-regulation, emotional regulation. So really using the breath, and there are different type of breathing exercises that can be done to support the sort of the calmness of the system. The whole body, mind and body, gets calmer rather than driven by negative thoughts or spiraling up or by negative emotions. Imagery, it's another psychological based strategies that is used with athletes, with dancers, and it's not for everybody. So some athletes that I worked with, or some dancers, found imaging themselves performing at a high level quite difficult in the third person. So it's not something for everybody, but it's widely used in the area of sports and exercise psychology. Controlling one's arousal level, redirecting the attention, so not just blocking out the distraction, but redirecting the attention to specific things that you set yourself to help return at a level of arousal that is conducive to optimal performance. And being present, attentional control, being present, being self-aware of what is happening, and that again requires a lot of practice. It's not done. It's not just done easily. Okay, so we're moving on to a couple more adaptation strategies because I'm mindful of the time. So another very simple strategy to support individual that may be feeling or suffering from mistake rumination, or maybe very quickly spiraling up in catastrophizing about a situation in the future, is to, you can take a piece of paper or you can do it just in your mind, is to choose one thing that you're going to stop, one thing that you're going to start doing anew, and one thing that you're going to continue in your daily routine, in your practice, in your rehearsals, in your task, in your daily task. And by setting yourself a very three simple, so one activity that you're going to stop doing because it's not serve you the right purpose, one thing that you're going to start anew, one thing that you're going to continue, it refocuses your attention onto these three things that you're going to set yourself, rather than getting the mind keep spiraling in thinking negatively, or indeed experiencing negative emotions. And another, I talk about the breath control, the breathing that I use a lot with my clients and with myself. Is there are different type of breathing. You do the 4-7-8, so 4 inhaling, 7 holding, 8 count exhaling, or you can do this as a box breath, which is breathing in for 4, holding for 4, breathing out for 4, and holding for 4. And this breath work really provides some very useful management of arousal, so management of emotions, management of your thinking, because you are really concentrating and paying attention to the breathing that you're doing, whether it's the box breathing or whether other type of counts of breathing. You have to find the breathing that helps your system, your body, and your mind to reach a good homeostasis, a good level of arousal, to be able then to engage in the activity and the performance or the task that you set yourself. Okay, so maintaining control under pressure. This is a quick acronym that I use with clients. Setting, so the S stands for setting an optimal performance state through breath control, internal talk, positive affirmation, or imaging technique. The A stands for adjusting if it's necessary. If I haven't reached my optimal performance state, then I needed to do something, I needed to adjust. Focusing with a quiet eye, so directing the attention to an external target. If I'm continuously led by negative thinking, negative phrases, or thinking about the if scenario, or ruminating about the difficult or the error, the mistake that I've done in my previous performance, is trying to focus my eye onto an external target. And there is sort of an exercise that can be done in supporting individual to then refocusing and reaching back this this sort of level of optimal state, optimal level of performance. And then the E stands for execute with a quiet mind. So let the conscious control go just to do it. If we are being led by continuous thinking, especially motor coordination movements with the body are not being executed at its best. So it's not the time to think about what is it that you're doing. You just need to execute. You need just to arrive to a point where you have practiced long enough to be able to feel that you can just execute the task, and letting the conscious control go. Okay, so we are coming. I think we might not have time for this, Carolina, or
Yeah,
yeah,
I think probably, I think you will share the slides as
we'll share the
well.
slides.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's fine. And there will be your email if they have any follow-up question. But I think I would like to move on to Q&A because there are a couple of questions. That's
absolutely,
okay?
absolutely, absolutely. There are references, so really perhaps just to promote some more question is, what would you change in your practice? And when I say practice, is the teaching, lecturing, it's practice in a wider term. Please use the chat to list the two things that you are likely to consider revisiting and or changing in your practice. This can be within your teaching responsibility or your study responsibility or your work projects. Is there something that you are taking away that you may consider changing or think about changing in your practice as a result of our conversation today? And those are some references, and thank you very much for listening. So shall I stop sharing, Carolina?
Yes, you can stop sharing for now. Just finishing what I wrote here. Okay. So first of all, thank you so much for this. I enjoyed this. I actually really love the practical aspects of it as well. I have to say I felt quite seen throughout this talk. And so I'm taking away quite a few, things for myself as well. I would like to move on to questions. So we had two questions, like three, I think three in total. One is by Patricia, and the question is, you mentioned that the word perfectionism has been associated with a negative nuance, such as being a perfectionist is a maladaptive thing. What do you think about the psychological measurements and scales out there that measure perfectionism? How can we choose a perfectionism scale that is able to capture the healthy version of perfectionism? And how do we interpret the higher scores in perfectionism scales, the healthy or the maladaptive maladaptive version?
Thank you. Thank you so much for such a comprehensive question, and absolutely something that is needed. I don't have on top of my mind any specific questionnaire that are actually looking at the positive of perfectionist or perfectionist traits, because of the kind of the literature of perfectionism, it goes up and down in some way, and in it's almost easy to look at the negative and what the extreme of perfectionist traits bring to. But it is wonderful to kind of to think about how we can measure and how we can look more from a research point of view, evidence-based academia that provides an understanding on how can we, how can we operationalize basically the positive traits of perfectionism so that it can inform more the practical tool, ultimately research informing the practice. The presentation that I did, it's very much from a practical, so it's what I see in my practice. And the idea to present to a client that or you are a perfectionist is very negative, and it's is going to lead to depression, is going to lead to all the negative things that I've listed and spoken about. That's not my role as a practitioner psychologist. And it's the idea to challenge that perfectionist trait. You can actually, because it is a construct, you can certainly be aware of the negatives, but you can also emphasize, which are not always seen by a perfectionist, about the positive of pursuing excellence. And sometimes it's a question of terminology. As I said, perfectionist, when you say perfectionist, it's always thought as a negative. But I am a great believer that we need to work what we do have, and so flipping it and looking at what can be done in order to harness those traits to pursue excellence, to enjoy the tasks and activities that we are embracing, to enjoy the pathway and the process. It's ultimately more positive for clients and for ourselves. I don't know if it has answered the question
No,
a
that's fine.
long way
No,
about it.
that's okay. Another question we had was, is there an obvious link between perfectionism and OCD?
Interesting. Yes, the OCD has not been kind of, I didn't bring it to the conversation, but certainly obsessive compulsive disorders um, have similarities to perfectionist traits. And it is again somebody who has a diagnosis of obsessive compulsive disorder. You want, well, as a psychologist, as a practitioner psychologist, I have a responsibility to support the individual in recognizing, being aware that those cognition, those emotions, those behaviors are maladaptive and are inhibiting a fulfilling life. But at the same time, I needed to support the individual in trying to um, change and try to support with the right environment, and identified three different dimensions of where those perfectionist traits may come as a similarity to the OCD. So it's through really a case formulation, through assessment of the individual, to try to identify what can we use and how we can support the person to move on.
Thank you. And I think our final question comes from a student, and they ask, how about the implication of doing artworks to regulate or alter the urge of being perfect for daily basis?
Can you repeat the question, Carolina? Sorry.
How about the implication of doing artworks to regulate or alter the urge of being perfect for daily basis? I think maybe they are referring to that one activity that you suggested to do, where you don't do one thing but do another thing instead.
Yes, yes. So I like very much again using different terminology can really shift the mind of people. So you spoke about in the question you spoke about hard working rather than seeking perfection or seeking kind of the unrealistic results. And it's very similar to me using pursuing excellence and pursuing a thoughtful excellence, because sometimes excellence is also compared with perfectionist trait. So it's the idea, it's the effort that one's places into an activity that needs to have the lens, needs to have the importance. In terms of the second part that you mentioned, Carolina, about the exercises. So the practicing of the flexibility, if I am really led by my perfectionist traits, I will find extremely difficult not to engage in something that I makes me feel good, and that's why I'm doing it. And so choosing an activity that doesn't, choosing an activity that is not, it's quite a daily activity just to start the practicing. It's a little bit like you don't practice ballet by performing immediately in the middle, but you start at the bar with different exercises. So it's about the practice of that mental and emotional flexibility, because it's not just about the thoughts that come into not engaging in something that you always do, but also the sort of emotional response that you may be experiencing. And with that, then breath control, self-awareness, it's the ability to be with that uncomfortable imperfection of not having done something that you always do all the time. It
Mhm,
makes you really feel good.
mhm. So maybe to answer the question is then if you do something that, you may be learning new, then you will have that more uncomfortable feeling of, not knowing what to do and how to do that. And that can help you to maybe regulate the perfectionism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
um the idea that sitting with imperfection, I know it sounds very strange, but it is really a good skill to have, especially when we are engaging in new things. It's not that that task defines me. So it's not because I don't perform it or I don't execute it well or even perfect that defines me. I'm not a failure because I have engaged for the first time in a skill. I have
Mhm.
engaged in for the first time in these skills. It makes me feel really uncomfortable because I'm not sure what I'm doing, but that's okay. It doesn't define me as a person. With practice, it will get better, and with practice, I'll be able to feel more comfortable.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much, Irina, again. We ran out of time, but I still wanted to have all the questions and your answers to them. So thank you again for joining our Tile Network and our seminar today. I think it was extremely important topic and many hands-on examples on how to maybe overcome this and tackle this in the future. So thank you very much. And thank you, everyone. This is being recorded. We will see you at the next one. And goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.